What's up, guys? Welcome to another True versus Truth podcast. I'm your host, Matt Forte, along with my beautiful wife,
Danielle Forte.
All right.
Do you like it when I say my last name? Does it make you happy
I changed
inside?
your name, girl. Biblically, that has importance.
But I also
change your name.
I also don't subscribe to the things that you said before. See, we're talking about conflict today. We're gonna start with conflict.
Conflict resolution.
But you started when you said you changed my name for the better. Like my name was not immaculate before.
This is key. You saw how she put words in my mouth? I changed your name for the better.
It.
I didn't say better. I said I changed your name, girl. You see.
No, he said for the better. I have witnesses.
Tone.
The Bible even talks about having witnesses. Okay? And I have witnesses. Yeah. I will call on our parents. All four of them.
Well, I mean, I changed
Danielle
your name.
Daniels is an immaculate name.
And what's up with all like the hyphening names and stuff like that?
I don't know. Well, I mean, hey, their prerogative. If I could have hyphenated my name, it would have been Danielle Nicole Daniels Forte.
Yep, I wasn't letting that happen.
See, but you're going to want Nala and Nia to hyphenate their names so you don't lose Forte. Yeah. Tell the truth.
Yeah, it's double standard. It's okay to have double standards if you're a girl dad.
As I said, we're talking about conflict and conflict resolution today.
All right. So you starting to fight with me already?
You want to fight? You want to tussle?
Oh, my gosh. Really?
Jump in, babe. Go ahead.
No, it's all you.
It's on me?
Yeah.
Look, here's the thing.
I mean, I don't want to start a fight, so you go ahead.
Look, here's the thing. In our lives as Christians, conflict will always surround us. Jesus did not tell us, hey, there won't be anything that pushes back at you. There won't be any conflict. There absolutely will be conflict and maybe more because you're a Christian.
Not maybe.
Okay, definitely. For sure. So I think that this conversation will be interesting because conflict, it permeates in every point of our life. And to think that it won't in our marriages, in our parenting, relationships, friends, family, those things happen. And we have to know how to deal with it from a kingdom biblical perspective. And what does God tell us to do and how to fight fair and hold people accountable.
When we talk about conflict, the only way to be well-versed in conflict or to grow in it is to have had conflict. I think as human nature, you run away or shy away from conflict because it's either uncomfortable or could be painful or traumatic, depending on the kind of conflict that you encounter. But you're right. As Christians, you will encounter persecution and trials and tests, and those are types of conflict. It's no secret. It's in the Word. And so I think we often, there's young Christians who, as Paul said, are milk-fed that need to graduate to meat, but they think prosperity gospel-wise that, because God is so gracious and he's so good, that coming to Christ means that there will be no trouble.
Absolutely.
Or anything like that. That reminds me of when Jesus was preaching to the multitude and he told his disciples afterwards, let's go to the other side. And then he falls asleep. And he literally snuggled up like on a pillow, like you meant to go to sleep, right? And then the storm was going on. Do you not care that we're going to perish? And he's like, ye of little faith. And peace be still, right? So that means to me that in the middle of God's will, which they were in, they got to trust his word. He said, let's go to the other side. Yet the storm happened. So you can be in a storm and be in the middle of God's will. So the thing is to trust God to handle that. But when we talk about conflict, there's many different levels to that. There is, the forgiveness piece of it. There is, not allowing bitterness to seep in a situation. Then there's other like cycles or patterns that you can see. If you're always in conflict with people, maybe it's you. I don't. You know what I'm saying? Like sometimes we got to look in the mirror.
Sometimes.
A lot of times, I guess we got to look in the mirror. But there's, I've known, people, and there's some people who don't want answers. They want conflict. And so when you speak to them, and like Proverbs gives you a lot of wisdom on that, is when two people are arguing, you don't know who's the fool or not. Because you're both arguing, you both look foolish. But conflict can be a good thing, and I'll tell you why later. But you can go ahead.
All I was gonna say was, in every conflict, no matter if it is caused by us personally, by someone else, or an outside force or situation, we have a responsibility in how we respond. Every single thing that we do, it's never one-sided. If you ever heard people say, so what happened? And then everybody has their story.
There's one side and then the other side, and then there's the truth.
And I've gotten to the point, I've said this many times to people, you heard me say it. Okay, but how did you show up? How did you respond? And we've even said it to each other in conflicts like, hey, all right, let me take responsibility for how I showed up. Now, this is where we get to the point. It's something that Jesus has been working on me on, and that's been apologies. I've been learning to apologize to Matthew. Thank you, Jesus. Anyway.
I'm going to go black church mama on you. That's my baby.
Now, but I've also learned in that to see, hey, why am I showing up the way that I'm showing up? Why do I feel, the question was, why was it so hard for me to apologize? Matt asked me multiple times, why is it so hard for you to apologize? And it took me literally years to figure it out. But I got to the point where I was like, you know what, Danielle, what is it? What is it that's causing you to react in that manner? And I was like, you know what? Oh my gosh, because I felt like I had to apologize my whole life for everything about me. I had to apologize for my ethnicity. I had to apologize for how I looked or how I grew up or the things that I had or my family. All these different things. I always felt so apologetic. I got tired of apologizing. So I was like, you know what?
I'm not apologizing
anymore. Not
Which
doing
had nothing to do with me.
Nothing. But it was, how did I show up in that moment?
Yeah.
And it taught me even to speak differently to my children. When I do something wrong with my kids, I will apologize to them. Yeah. Baby, mommy was in a very bad mood today.
Yeah.
Mommy was not so kind when I said that to you. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. They need to hear I'm genuine, just like you talked about in one of the other podcasts. I'm sorry, not if I did, but that I made you feel that way.
Yeah.
And validating that.
Because there's some times, even if your intentions are well, even if you have good intentions, that doesn't mean that the other person will feel that as it being good intentions. So you might have good intentions and it hurts someone's feeling. You can't say sorry if. It's a fact, because they're like, well, you made me feel this way. It's not if I felt that way.
I felt that way.
So validation is key. That's a good key point in conflict and conflict resolution, is validating the person you're in conflict with, their feelings, and say, sorry that you felt this way when I said this, and then you go forward from there. And so I think another key would be some of the wisdom from Proverbs is that a soft word turns away wrath, which I always keep that at the forefront of my mind, because I'm a confrontational person. Like I was raised that way.
Did you say that out loud?
Yeah, I've said it before. Don't play with me.
Wait a minute.
Don't trip.
Have you said that before?
Yeah, bro. What you talking about?
Maybe not to me.
See, now I'm getting confrontational with you. So,
See, competition.
but I mean, the nature of football is conflict. Like you have conflict every play because you have opposition every play.
You have to be a goon.
So you have to, do that. And so it's, you got to separate the field and off the field. But mentally, like, you're still a confrontational person. So you're competitive. You want to win everything. You want to do that. So where do we get into trouble when we want to win the argument? Because and this is for specifically married couples or like relationships, like fiance, married, dating, and all that. Because if you're dating, I mean, you're all going towards one place.
Right.
You want to be hopefully you want to be married and be one. But what happens when you're of the mindset, like, even if it's factual, like you may honestly have the in a court that you have the evidence that you're absolutely right, and then you abuse them with the truth, and you're like, I won that argument.
I did that.
Why is that bad?
Because that's not fighting fair, and that's not fighting the way that God intended us. If we look at Jesus in the Bible, anytime he was, quote unquote, checking someone, he was doing it in love, and it was always fact. And if I'm going beneath the belt, that's not, we're called to love our neighbor. And then if I'm talking to you like I'm not loving on me, like if I wouldn't talk to myself that way, what deems it okay to talk to another person, especially a person that you're building a relationship, or you say you are that you love, in love, all those things. If you're not doing that, the Bible literally tells us how to go through conflict. In what is this? Matthew. He says, if your brother sins against you, go tell him his fault between you and him alone. If he listens to you, you have won your brother.
So it's accountability.
Accountability. If he won't listen, take one or two others with you, so that by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses, every fact may be established.
Persistence.
But that also doesn't mean fight in front of your mom and daddy and everybody else to embarrass them. What's the motivation? And then it says,
don't you embarrass me right now.
But you embarrassed me. If he doesn't pay attention to them, tell the church. If he doesn't pay attention, and that doesn't mean go to church like, look, y'all, my husband did
tell
this,
the
my
whole
man.
Church. Yeah.
It's like, no, the accountability of the church. You go counsel, seek counsel with your pastor, all those different things. If he doesn't pay attention to even the church, then let him be like a Gentile and a tax collector to you. So he gives us instructions.
Yeah, I think we give up on people too. They don't see it how I see it. So like, it's a wrap. There's sometimes you're not going to agree, but you can agree to disagree.
Right.
We're in the age there's no gray area. There's no gray areas. We can disagree on this subject, but we still love each other's company, or I love you as a friend. Right. All of that. It's like, wait, you believe in this? Oh, I'm gonna turn my back on you, or whatever. Like
no, I still love you. Me, I don't have to agree with you.
If when it comes down to the Bible, like if you don't believe as what God's word says, then I still love you. But like, I'm not really listening to what you talking about.
That also doesn't mean that you don't interact with them either, because we are supposed to be amongst others and show them the fruit of our life by the way that we live. And that also means showing Jesus' character. And Jesus was not just kicking it with all the saints like, we right. Well, no, that's why the rest of y'all go away. No, he was amongst them. That's why the Pharisees hated him and was hating, because he hung out with the tax collectors and the prostitutes and the misfits, as you would say. So, but you said one thing. You said, Jesus would speak the truth in love to them. But if we talk about Jesus' character, he's considered the lion and the lamb. And so people get that lamb part, and they're like, yep, the sacrificial lamb. But what about the lion? What about the lion?
What about the lion part?
The strong part.
So,
when I say a lamb isn't strong.
So, I think, I've seen that in Christianity, people kind of shy away from it because they feel like they can't be uniquely themselves if they're like an upfront like person like that. You know what I'm saying? Or that they feel like they have to tone their personality down. So you always got to be humble and be humble, but like you can still
don't
you
diminish
don't
your
have
light.
you don't have to take disrespect and all these other things from people.
Oh, you mean like I did for the former part of my life?
Yeah, and we have grown many steps. She don't take mess from nobody anymore. It's like, all right, I got to pull Scrappy Doo back. Like, let me at him.
No, it's not that bad. But honestly, for many years, my belief was I still don't like conflict. So I would shy away from it. And I would feel like, oh my gosh, are they not going to see Jesus' character in me if I'm, coming with actual facts and telling people where I've either been hurt or just shunned or not holding people accountable for their actions. But then people are holding me accountable for things I didn't do at the same time.
Yeah.
So I think as time progressed, it was like, I am tired of being a doormat. I am tired of being the pastor's kid, an athlete's wife who I have to stay in my place. Because God did not give us a confidence and a word for us to turn away from conflict. And now I've gotten to the point, I'm never going to disrespect people. That my goal is never to disrespect a person. But I will, at this point in my life, I will now feel comfortable in saying, that was not okay. This is not what was said or done that either hurt me or that is not in alignment with Jesus' word. And hold myself to it too.
Yeah, when I think about when Jesus that when they would they had the money changers in the temple, or like they were selling sacrificial animals and things like that. Basically, just turn it into like a market where they was buying and selling and doing all kind of stuff. Which he was like, this is a house of prayer, my Father's house, and he came in and flipped the tables and was getting them out of there. So it's not bad to have zeal for the faith. Right. But it is when you try to bully people into believing what you believe, or like you don't want to bully. It's through love. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like even he rebuked Peter when they came, the Pharisees and all that. They came to get him and arrest him, and Judas betrayed him, and he cut the centurion's ear off. And he turned to Peter and he's like that's not the way. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But I wanted to get into how conflict can be good. So there's an interesting passage in Genesis in the Old Testament where Jacob, who's described as a deceiver before his name is changed. Change your name, girl. But
you just couldn't help yourself.
He left and he was working for Laban to marry Rachel. Right. And it shows you how stuff comes back around on you. The deceiver was deceived by Laban and was given Leah. So then he had to work another. He was like, I want her too, though. And so, but they, eventually he leaves, and because he was like, I'm working for you for like 20 years. Like, let's get out of here. Yeah. And he leaves with his squad, his whole family and stuff. So then they meet back up, and he thinks that, Laban's going to try to like, take all this stuff or whatever and like come back. But they talk about it and they decide to separate. And it was in God's will for where he was going. That's where he needed to go. So that conflict led him to go where God wanted him or needed him to go. Same thing with Moses. The conflict of him trying to protect his people, as he was raised as an Egyptian but was a Hebrew. He slayed the Egyptian, yet they, you gonna do us like you did that Egyptian? So that conflict, he fled, for 40 years in the wilderness through his development out there until it was the right time for God to encounter him and bring him back to save his people. So conflict can be good if in God's will, using it the right way.
The motivation for it. And there's many times I used to be afraid if I separated myself from certain relationships, thinking that God wouldn't be pleased because I was separating myself, and I didn't want to get to him and him say like, hey, well, why did you leave that person to the wayside? Why did you stop that relationship? And the closer I have gotten to him, the more I've been encouraged into saying, this person, this relationship, this thing here is for a season. God placed it in there for a certain season of my life to either teach me something, or to grow something, or to further his kingdom and his will. And what I'll say is the difference that you can tell when you're supposed to let go of a relationship through healthy conflict is to say, okay, Jesus, is this season over? Is what you wanted for this relationship, has it happened? Whether that be a friendship, whether that be a spouse, significant other, whether it be a family member. Let me be clear. Just because you have family members, it doesn't mean that you don't love them, but it deems the closeness to be broken at some point because that season is not fruitful anymore, and it becomes out of his will because you're not furthering his kingdom in that relationship.
So the fruit is the telltale of not necessarily cutting people off, but just transitioning into a different
I think it's is the door closed or not? The door is always open.
Yeah.
Look, I've had friendships that have ended. I've said, hey, here's my piece. Here's why this ended. I'm sorry that you felt any type of, whatever I have done, whether I know the things that I know that I've done, if I have done something, the things that I know that I've done, I'm going to express and apologize to you for them. Because we said that earlier, the way that I hurt you, that I didn't realize I hurt you, I'm sorry for. After that has happened, then you have to move on. You can't just stay there and say, well, we're going to keep going back and forth. You did this, you did this, you did this. That's not healthy.
Yeah.
That's not healthy for that person or for you because you're rehashing, you're not moving forward.
And you're not listening. Like when you're listening to respond.
Right.
And so that's another key in conflict is don't just listen in order to respond or to formulate. As someone's talking, how can I defend that? How can I counter that attack? This
is how Matthew and I used to fight when we were dating.
No, we didn't.
Yeah. And it was always okay, how do I respond to that? And then I recall so many times saying, but you're not hearing what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. I am hearing what you're saying. Like, no, you're not. And then he was like, you're not listening to what I'm saying. Yes, I am, because I said,
no, you're not listening to me. No, you.
So it was a horrible merry-go-round until we learned to fight fair. Now, I will say we've learned to fight fair.
Yeah, we don't fight. We discuss.
We discuss things passionately. No, I'm kidding. Some days it's passionately. We discuss, and that's why I'm saying we fall to our flesh. If we're in a mood, it rarely happens now. But in our former life, it wasn't healthy. But we had to learn to fight fair and remove what was deemed self-serving to say, okay, let's look at this from a bird's eye view. Where did I come in hot wrong? Where did you come in hot wrong? And then I think the biggest turning point, and you can tell me if you agree with this or not, is when we learn to discuss, like you said. When we learn to discuss any type of conflict, when we were able to say, I responded this way because this from my past triggered me.
Connecting the dots
as to why that I came in that way.
Yeah, I think that's important is you
knowing why.
When you're discussing or fighting fair, to get to the root of what the issue is. Because sometimes, like, if you've heard it, we've both heard it a lot of times, is that it's not really about what it's about.
Right.
So it may be something trivial, and the dude may be like, yo, what is she flipping out over pancakes? Like, I'm like, what is the deal? But it's not really about that. It may be something that has accumulated over time that you haven't said anything about it until it explodes. So the knowledge, like a lot of, I used to say all the time, baby, I can't read your mind. I don't know that. So you're like, well, I did that because, or I said that because this, and this.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, well, now I know. I will try my hardest not to do that anymore, so that it doesn't.
I have a perfect example. Remember when we were first dating, and your mom was gonna so cringe. Remember when we were first dating, and it was Christmas. It was like our first Christmas.
The snowman thing.
The snowman story. And Matt and I, we were young. I mean, I was 19 years old when we started dating. And Matt had that was his first full year. Well, that wasn't your first full year. It was your second season in Chicago. And
I had never really been around snow like that.
And he had never really been around snow. So I was like, we should make a snowman for Christmas. Like, it was Mariah Carey, All I Want for Christmas type of thing in my mind.
This will show you the difference of how men think and how women think as well.
So I went to my mom's house to start Christmas dinner. And then I came back to Matt's house so we could make the snowman. I pull up in the driveway, and him and his mom are almost done. They're halfway through, almost done, making the snowman. And I was like...
She flipped out.
I was like, oh my gosh, my feelings are so hurt. But my feelings were so hurt turned into pure rage.
I was like... Yo,
so he
it's
comes
a snowman.
inside. He was like, come on. They're like, come on. I was like, no, don't worry about it. I'm going to go inside. And then we come in the house and we have a full-blown argument because I wanted to do something special for the first time with my boyfriend. He's never been around snow. And it was something that was sentimental to me because there were multiple times that I wanted to make snow. I've lived in Chicago my entire life. But making snowmen was just not really a part of something that I did. So it was special for me too. So I was like, this is going to be great. And then it was like done. I was like, oh, I felt like it was taken away from me. So the whole argument was for him. He was like, it's a snowman, bro.
Yeah, so my point of view as a male, I'm like, we can make, there's a lot of snow. We can make another snowman.
I was like,
it wasn't a big deal. But expectations, like we talked about in the marriage podcast, is that we had different expectations and those weren't met.
Yep. But we figured it out.
About a snowman.
A snowman. We were frozen. Do you want to build a snowman?
And when she left, she kicked it over too.
That is not true.
I was just joking.
I just side-eyed it when we drove past it. That is not what happened.
Kicked his head off.
That's not true. I wanted Olaf to be both of our friends.
What do you say? Because I wanted to talk about 1 Peter 3, and it talks about wives and husbands, because it gives an remedy to the wife who has a husband who's just like, she's doing the right things, she's living the right way, yet he's disobedient. He's a disobedient husband, it says. And I'll read it for you. It says, in the same way, wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands, so that even if some disobey the word, they may be won over without a word by the way their wives live. So that's just encouragement to the wives, is that although he may be being disobedient to the word, you keep living in God. So that means submit, like they said, submit to your husband, but only if he's submitting to God. So like if it's outside of God's will, then it's like, nah, I don't have to do that. I'm not submitting to you on that because this is what God says. And so in doing that and keeping it 100, it says that they may be won over without a word by the way you live. So they'll watch you and be like, man, like she's growing, like she's leaving. Basically, we live in the same house, but her growth is like leaving me in the dust, and I'm being left behind.
That also speaks to when we were talking about I think it was on the marriage podcast, when we were talking about women that take their children to church as opposed to fathers. But this is an encouragement to women that take their children to church, and the fathers aren't there, or they're for whatever reason, whether they don't want to go, whether they're at work, whatever the case may be. While you're submitting to Christ and doing what you're supposed to do as a godly woman and stewarding your family well, he deems that as something that he wants to bless. He wants to bless you through something that you're doing. And in turn, it will absolutely ticket your spouse. There's times when Matt and I are doing different things, whatever is going on in our lives. And if it's something that's fruitful, it'll prompt the other one to do something in a godly way, whether it's him reading his Bible or me reading my Bible, or if it's us doing something with the kids or having a good conversation with the kids, or if he notices that I'm tired in some way and he'll pick up the piece and be like, "Hey babe, I'm gonna cook dinner tonight." "Oh, you are? Magical." But it shows how it's this dance, honestly, that you're going through in different relationships, even around your friends. It shows the fruit of your labor and your influence on the people around you.
Yeah. At the end of that section in 1 Peter chapter 3, it says, "Husbands, in the same way, live with your wives in an understanding way, as with a weaker partner, strength-wise, not that you guys are weaker than us, showing them honor as co-heirs of the grace of life, so that your prayers will not be hindered." When I first read that, I was like, whoa. So like, if I'm not living with my wife in an understanding way, God ain't listening to what I'm saying, which shows you that the unity of being
the
one,
oneness,
there's a blessing there. And so in your marriage, if you guys are always being rubbed the wrong way, and then you praying for this and for that, and you like wondering, well, God ain't listening, it's because your prayers are hindered. And as the male, it specifically addresses the husband in that. So I think that's an important lesson as far as conflict too, is that, even in conflict, still live with her in an understanding way, because how else will your prayers be heard?
Well, understanding is, I think it's a key word.
Yeah.
Because understanding your spouse, understanding a friend, a family member, understanding is something that takes wisdom, that takes grace, and that takes mercy. There's so many different things that have happened in each person's lives. If I'm just talking about using us as an example, we've both lived a different story, different life. And that will lend to every single interaction that we have. And if you're not seeking an understanding of how I'm living, where I'm coming from, what is the foundation of it, there's no actual flourishing that can happen, which then God is like, look, I'm going to hold back your prayers because you're like, you can't do the selfish, I got this, I've been reading my Bible, I've been going to church, I've been praying, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, you do what you're supposed to do. No, we are responsible for each other as well in our oneness in Christ.
And I mean, that's when you talk about, people with, if the Ten Commandments, it's loving God and then loving people, and then you fulfill the full law of that. And not that the Ten Commandments get you into heaven or anything like that. It's just, that's what you're called to do. So I think that's why conflict and conflict resolution and all that is important, because you are. I was definitely one of the ones that's like, man, I don't need no people. Like, I just need my people. That's it. But how you gonna make disciples if you don't like people and you can't talk to people? You're not approachable. You don't know how to help people in conflict resolution or in a conflicting space. But we've come to that time where it's the best time, where if there's anyone who is seeking a new relationship with their Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, they can do that. But if you have fallen off, you can also always come back. God's grace outruns all of our sins, and it falls flat at the foot of the cross. And so if you say this prayer and confess with your mouth and believe in your heart that the Son of God, Jesus, was born of a Virgin Mary, suffered on the cross and died and was buried and resurrected, and you believe that in your heart, then you've attained salvation, not on anything of our own, but by the atoning death of Jesus Christ, which forgives all of our sins, past, present, and future. And so if you've done that, welcome to the club, the best club you can be in. But also, we want to invite you to stay connected in the Word. And so visit the True Versus Truth Podcast website, which is trueversustruthpodcast.com, and stay tuned for more.